What's going on, everybody? You got Rich Jekyll here, the Millipreneur, and Tom Kurtz, the whole nine yards, the raw deal coming at you guys. We took a couple weeks off. Just, hey, life got hectic, business is booming. We're both entrepreneurs trying to build our companies, and we've decided to change up our day and time, and we're back here with you guys to talk life, talk business, talk shop, and see what we can do to help all of us along the way in the route of what's called life. Tom, how you doing?
Good man, good. Yeah, like you're saying, you got to adapt and overcome. That was the challenge for us. We thought Sundays would work, and after a few days of doing that, didn't work out for us. So we switched it up Monday evenings.
Live Monday Night Raw. That's funny. It's like
Bringing back your childhood.
ooh, that's a good idea right there. Monday Night Raw. I don't know if we would deal with any licensing issues with that one with Vince McMahon, but hey, nothing but love. I was a loyal follower as a fan until I realized it was staged. I was slightly heartbroken, but we're not going to get into it all. But anyway, so hope you all have enjoyed our last several segments. We're taking you through, different paths and talking about, opportunities and routes that individuals take and creating your own path in life. And by no means have we figured it all out. We haven't, but if we did, that probably means that we would move on to something else and try to figure something new out. So that led us into our conversation today prior to hitting the record button, and it was, what are we going to talk about? Well, I said, you know what, let's talk about managing expectations, right? Sounds kind of dry, not really. This is going to be fun. Managing expectations, whether it's in personal relationships, with yourself, business relationships. What does that look like? How do we keep ourselves sane on a day by day basis? And Tom and I were talking about his business, for example. He was giving me some examples of some frustrations he was having in terms of dealing with clients, dealing with other vendors. Tom's a general contractor, a very good one, may I add. And tell us a little bit more about that, Tom.
So yeah, basically, when it comes to managing expectations, that's kind of the pinnacle point of what makes a good contractor and what makes a great contractor. Like I said, and Rich has said, we're growing, we're learning, we're understanding. I'm 29, so by general contractor years, I am in my infancy. We've gone from one employee this year to four employees. So now I'm managing expectations of four people just in house. They range anywhere from 57 to 25. Um, so now I'm managing expectations and emotions of different ages, different generations, different feelings, different genders, different things all together. Give you kind of a breakdown. I've got a guy who's 57. He's a project manager. He's been in the military. He's got a couple of kids. His kids are actually closer to my age than I am to his age. Um, he handles things one way. He's seen it. He's done it. Um, he's financially secure. He doesn't have to worry about that. He's not. It's not over his head. He's got health benefits through his wife. So we're managing those expectations of what he's looking for in his career with us. To I've got a guy who's turning 25, I believe it was this month, shortly here, or excuse me, 26. Because the whole reason was he's getting bumped off his parents' insurance. He's getting to that age of life where he's getting married. Kids are in the cards here sooner rather than later. So I'm managing those expectations of what he wants in his career. Now he's a long-term employee, so that affects how I'm going to handle things versus the girl who's 25, 26, who has a baby, a short-term employee, and then I've got one girl who works part-time. She's got another career. She's got a daughter who's 5 or 6. So we've got all these different demographics, different things I'm managing just in those people. Then we've got another 11 projects going on. So I've got typically a husband and wife team. So that's another 22 people's expectations I'm managing. And then I'm trying to manage my managers' expectations to set their expectations through osmosis, if you could say, to create, a company standard, company practice, and how we're going to do everything and what our expectations are. And then I've got subcontractors, and then I've got their employees. So you can see the trickle effect, and you can see how hard it is to get everybody on the same page. Also, to get everybody on the same page of what's acceptable. Because what's acceptable to Rich may not be acceptable to me. What's acceptable to me may not be acceptable to Rich. Um, for example, I've got a client today I ran by. We had a little extra debris than what we could haul off. So most people probably don't care on a major reno that there's a small pile of debris in the driveway. Um, some of them do. To me, it bothers me. So we took a sheet of black plastic, covered it up. So when you're driving by, it's not this pile of trash there. In the shadows, you may not even notice it driving by. You might say to someone, "Hey, did you notice that back there? What was that?" And they would have never even noticed.
If it's an HOA, though.
Well, this is in Charlotte, but Charlotte code enforcement's just as bad.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's a standard that I set, that I expect. It's an inconvenience, frankly. When you're managing subcontractors who, for the three other contractors they work for, aren't expected to do that. They just, it's acceptable. It's industry standard. Leave a pile there, pick it up tomorrow, no big deal. So how do you get that guy to price the job the right way, fit that expectation, stick with you, and you know that it's gotten done? Another example is had to take everything out of a client's house, and we could fit everything in the garage except for 3 pieces of furniture. So we weren't supposed to get rain Sunday. Thankfully, I only live like 3 miles from the project, but I see the storm clouds rolling in, so I jump in my truck. I'm racing over there. Probably broke a few traffic laws.
No, you didn't. No, we didn't. This is not an admission of guilt.
Yeah.
I'm not an attorney either. I've dealt with them.
So I get over there, and my flooring guy, who was there earlier in the day doing a coat of poly, had covered all that furniture for me. I mean, I didn't ask him to, didn't tell him to, didn't have
Right.
to. It was just done. So I didn't know that, but you better believe I was relieved to know that I don't have to manage that subcontractor for something that you think
Right.
would be just expected.
Right. I'm just gonna throw one at you, Tom. I mean, we live in Charlotte. You know the pop-up storms we get.
So, well, I've been watching.
Maybe that's something you should have handled beforehand or thought about, especially when it comes to furniture. I mean, think about that. Those people would have been pissed.
Yeah, well, we got
I'm
all
just
of
playing
that.
devil's advocate, but
Well, and that is to your point. So that got started on Saturday, knowing there's no storms. How do you manage again subcontractors, employees who are Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, to handle the client, to take care of covering that up, so on and so forth. Point is that in that particular relationship, we had a subcontractor who knew the standard, met the standard, and it wasn't an issue. Now, I've never been put in that position with that subcontractor,
right.
So I couldn't just say, "Oh, he took care of it." I had to trust, but verify. And sure as shit, he had covered it.
Did you know he was down there on the job?
Yeah, he had been there earlier in the day.
Gotcha.
So I knew he was there on Saturday. I knew that there was no weather rolling in Saturday night, and then I knew he was going to be there Sunday morning.
Right.
I did not know for sure because he didn't send me any pictures, didn't text me, told me it was done, nothing like that. No communication letting me know that it was done. But he knew the expectation, and he covered the furniture.
So how was this expectation set?
So
with him, because he's a subcontractor. So with my just general knowledge of the industry and how it all works, because he's hired to do a job for you. You're going to cut him a check. He's 1099, so he's not technically an employee that you had trained.
Right.
Right. So I wouldn't even call it almost an expectation. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I've been in positions myself before where I have done things that weren't asked of me, but I think I kind of revert that back to calling it common sense,
Well, and where do you draw that line of common sense? Because common sense to me is you take the furniture outside, you're leaving for the day, you cover it. He took the furniture outside, he was leaving for the day, he covered it. But
so he was the one that originally took the furniture out, not you?
Right.
Okay.
So he took it out. He covered it. But how can you, from one subcontractor to the next, know for sure without visually verifying that it was done? Yes, it's common sense that yes, you expect
Right.
it, but the expectation in this business is that they're not going to do it. And then who's liable?
Right.
Well, them because they put it outside and they didn't cover it, or you because you're the general contractor.
Right.
So then you get into arguments with your subcontractors, you get arguments with your homeowners. My point is that if you can set that expectation and get everybody on board that that's the standard, even if it's the painter's going by and he had nothing to do with it and he covered it, everybody working together to get a job done. And that's why I try and set a company culture of team effort, working together as a team, paying people quickly in order to get them to do the extra effort. But then it's
What's your preliminary correspondence, if you so will? So you had met said contractor prior to discuss the job and came to an agreement of, hey, you're going to provide this service and in return you're going to get this form of compensation, right? So there was that discussion.
yes.
So from a managerial standpoint, if I were to put that cap on, I think it's important how we relay messages, tone, perspective, and obviously context when having those conversations, especially up front. So I guess the onus is on you as the hiring party to say, hey, you're completing work for the whole 9 yards. Our company has a high level of service. Uh, we're extremely reputable, and this is what allows us to bring on and take on jobs. And therefore, we hold ourselves to a high standard so that we can continue to grow and accrue jobs. And therefore, if you do a good job as the sub and my company's reputation stays as is and continues to grow, right? That means more work for you. And I think these people understand that.
So you would think that from a common sense standpoint, in this business though, everybody, and I've worked as a subcontractor, when you come on, goes, I've got a ton of work for you. It's going to be great. Blah, blah, blah. They give you all these, again, managing expectations.
Over-promising and under-delivering.
Right. You get into the first job. Well, hey, listen, our prices are a little off. I need you to, hook me up on this one. Do me a favor. Job 2 comes around. Same thing. But not only does it the same thing, but now the money comes a little slower this time. Job 3 comes around. Now it's the same thing and money comes really slow. Job 4 comes around and contractor disappears. Or contractor argues with you, or contractor says, I'm not paying you for X, Y, and Z reasons, or I'm docking you for X, Y, and Z reasons. In this business, it's very...
This is the GC, not the sub?
The GC saying this to the sub. The subcontractor will go in.
Yeah, but wouldn't you build that reputation?
Well, and that's what we're doing right now, is we're paying fast. Our standard is whatever you finish by Friday, send us an invoice by Monday, Tuesday. We have a check for you by following Friday. So 7 days turnaround, which, a lot of GCs want a 30-day net, which also makes it really hard for those GCs to get favorable pricing and guys to work on that. Net 15 is even tough. If a guy knows the check's coming the following Friday, typically you can get some of the best guys out there. There's also another reason for that too. If a guy can't wait till the following Friday for a check, he's probably not that good of a subcontractor. The two kind of go hand in hand.
Or he could just be having a month where he had a lot of expenses. The car died, or the summer camp costs more. They had to get the kid in summer camp too. No, I get it. I understand.
A subcontractor who can't initially, when he's working with you, manage his finances. It's different if a subcontractor comes to me and says, hey, the contractor B didn't pay me this Monday. Any chance you can get me that check on Thursday so I can get it in for payroll after we've been working together? Different story.
Right.
But subcontractor who says, hey, I finished today, can I get some money? Is subcontractor who can't manage finances, who is probably also going to be an issue in his work. They go hand in hand.
Right, and we call that in the industry, in the insurance and financial services industry, morale hazard.
Yeah.
Okay, where one indicating factor is usually a common theme in other avenues. And I understand where you're coming from, especially from an advisor standpoint. Cash flow, is king, and makes it tough on you as a provider as well because you're also only getting paid, X Y up front, and then probably on the tail end of the project too. So you have to have a surplus of funds and sitting in cash to be able to accommodate this. And you've been in business for how long?
Since 2011 officially, and then 2013 doing nothing but contracting. So
Right,
about
so 7 years, and probably for the first 3 years you're in the red, maybe. I mean, when you're starting a new business, I mean, I'm not speaking to you particularly, but that's common.
right. Well, and that's where you start as doing the work yourself, then building up a little nest egg of cash. And then I always sarcastically say, the bank of whole 9 yards is closed. Pay your bills.
Right.
Come on. Because clients want to get behind and subs want to get ahead. But we're getting off on a tangent. You're managing expectations. Well, managing expectations. Work's going to be completed, and that's setting the expectations up front when you're dealing with the client. Is work's going to be completed. Here's your progress payment point when X, Y, and Z are complete. Next progress payments due.
So you break up your payments for the project. Some people might. Have you ever find people paying up front in full? Rarely.
Referral clients typically are like, hey, how much you need. They're very offering of money. But as a business owner in general, what I do, I'm very strict on it. I don't want money early. Money early puts you in a position where now you are the financial fiduciary for that money that isn't even started on that part yet. Where when it's paid, when it's supposed to be paid, it's going directly to where it is. You're not micromanaging to make sure this lump of cash stays over here until it's needed for that project. So that's why I don't like any extra cash coming in. This is what the contract says. This is what you're going to give me at this time.
Right. I mean, and I can understand how that could create.
It's a fiduciary liability that I don't want.
Right. It makes sense. Yeah, and that comes with it a whole nother 9 yards of, all right, do I plug this into my overall business operation and utilize that cash flow to make other bill payments? And God forbid something really happens and now you have to refund that money. And you might just be in a stage of your business cycle where, shit, I probably shouldn't have spent it, but let's just prevent the issue on the front end by having expectations with yourself and standards of procedure.
Right. And then the other thing too is it may not even come to that managing the money, but now we've got, like I said, 1 employee to 4 employees. Well, 1 employee is working with me for 4 years. I'd give him my bank account codes, my social security number, and everything. I wouldn't worry about him. My other employee, he's been with me for about 6 months. I could probably trust him. I don't really worry about it. He's the one that's questioning when there's a charge on his Lowe's card on a Sunday. Why is that there? Finding out that they just didn't process credit cards from Saturday until Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
But he's looking. Yeah. But he's looking at that. So I can probably trust him. But I've also got 2 employees who are new to me. I don't know them that well. Well, one I do. I've known her for years. But who's to say that they're not getting themselves in a bad situation? And again, Ro could get himself in a bad situation. I trust him, like I said, I give him everything. But and that's the kind of employees you want, ones that you can say, hey, here's the keys to the castle, and no, they won't go anywhere.
Right. That trust comes with time. It's like any other relationship, I think.
Yeah. Now, with that said, a client gives me a deposit or a payment prior to when it's supposed to be paid. Now that money, as small as that risk is at risk because it's in an account that other people potentially would have access to. Another reason how I manage money in general is everybody else besides myself only has access to a debit card that has a bank account that I transfer cash into, and I only transfer typically lumps of like 500 at a time, because if I got whacked for 500 and they said, hey, I quit and I took your money, I'm like, well, 500 I can survive, no big deal. Give them access to all the cash, you're kind of
If somebody
in a bad spot.
yeah, I mean, you're putting yourself at a higher level of risk. And
So again, managing expectation. The expectation is, I don't want any more money from you until we hit this level. And there are clients who, even when we're getting close, are like, hey, I'm gonna be out of town Friday. Can I give you? It's Wednesday. Can I give you a check? Well, I'm not 100% sure that the electrician and the plumber are going to show up. They say they're going to show up. They're there 95% of the time.
And then they don't show up. It's like, hey, I gave you a check on Wednesday. What? Now you're not paying the job. And then it goes back to that whole connotation of, oh, GCs can't be trusted, and this is why. Look what they did to me, even though that's really not the case. And then jump to worse conclusions. And I completely understand that.
Yeah. So another management tool we use is QuickBooks Payments Online. That way, if they are on vacation, I can simply send them photos of the work completed, invoice them, they pay it online, it shows up in my account 2 days later. Perfect.
Yeah.
So again, managing that expectation that they can go and leave knowing a job's going to get done while they're gone. So anyway, really, when GCs get to the point, and this is where I get frustrated, I think, so many carpenters go out and say, hey, I'm going to go be a GC. They don't realize that being a GC really has nothing to do with the carpentry aspect. It has to do a lot with managing expectations as you grow. And then it has to do with financial management. And then it has to do with project management.
Right.
And the fact that you know how to swing the hammer is helpful. And we've got some clients that have salesmen that have never swung a hammer. And you see the flaws there. They end up missing things that a guy who swung a hammer would have seen.
Right.
Expectations.
It makes sense, and I think a lot of these expectations, if you so will, they have they have a multiplier effect, right? And you begin, as your business grows, you end up building this reputation, and especially from a referral standpoint too. I mean, referrals are good as gold, right? It's a previous client that was so thrilled with the work that you provided that I'm sure over a couple of drinks on that nice patio on that Saturday night with that couple down the street, oh, we love the patio. Who did it? Well, Tom Kurtz at Whole 9 Yards. And John, we were thinking about doing the same thing. Would you mind putting us in touch? So, and then, who knows what kind of backdoor talk there is there, all good since you get the call, but, anyways, it doesn't matter. But ultimately, I think I've been in a position and I've built a business before where it was 100% referrals. And I think you and I could both agree the process and the experience with a referral is completely different than somebody cold off the street. Because there's that pre-existing level of relationship, even though you may not know them, but there's that mutual tie.
Right.
So I think maybe for you, and I mean for you, for myself, for anybody that's in business, setting these expectations for yourself, setting a standard of service and a level of service, and staying true to it with each and every client, then ultimately will hopefully, in theory, generate 100% referral, source for you, and makes it easier for you to operate in the long term. But that's a time game, just like anything else. You don't put $100 into the market and expect 6% return overnight.
Right. Well, my point, I guess where I'm going with that is that's great in theory, that's great in statement, but then teaching that, training that, creating that culture, reaching that out to employees, customers, vendors, subcontractors, and making that full circle come around is a lot more difficult. And that's what separates a good contractor from a great one.
And ultimately, you're in the toughest boat. That onus falls on you as the business owner.
It does. And then, but my point is that when you're thinking about, and this is why I like this podcast so much, is that
because it's ours, of course.
Well, yeah, that too. But that's my way of running business is going big and having employees, and that's one of the things I said to one of my subs the other day. I said, when you get to a point where what you do every day affects a couple hundred lives and puts food on the table for a couple hundred people, it kind of becomes a little bit of an addiction. And I kind of forgot where that was going, but basically it's talking about where I run a business in scale, and I'm trying to scale, and where millennial or millipreneurs want to run a business where they're managing the expectation of the client, and the client may deal with a vendor because a lot of smaller run businesses are more online, less interaction between a vendor and the client. Typically, you are the middleman between them. Um, is that right? Is that wrong? Is that the best way of doing it in this world now? Are you better being lean and mean and independent, or are you better on scaling, or you know, um, that's a question I've been asking.
That's important there. So lean and mean, and I don't know. Me personally, I don't do well with that type of approach. I'll usually shut them out, and I won't do business with them moving forward. Especially myself in the position that I am as an advisor working with clients. I am establishing a client base with people and businesses that I'm going to be working with for a long period of time. 5, 10, 20 years, as opposed to a transaction, right? So for me, it's important on the front end to develop rapport and get a feel and really vet not only them out, but give them an opportunity to vet me out. Because is this something that I want to deal with moving forward? And if I hesitate to pick up your call because it's you having unrealistic expectations, or you just don't understand something and you jump to conclusions, which is fine. We all do that, but it's just a matter of how you relay that. Then I don't want to deal with you, because for me, I've realized earlier on in my life that I want to live as stress free as possible, and that might be the millennial in me, right?
And that's exactly what I mean. So who's right, who's wrong?
So
That's why I was like, because it's what we do is because we've got the two different views.
right.
The millennial in us is like one way of stress free, and I'm over here going, let's scale this thing out and let me affect all these lives.
Hold on a second. I'm not saying I said as stress free as possible. Doesn't mean I'm not willing to take on stress. And then
No,
that's arbitrary, because what's that level of stress?
but where I'm going for you is that it's for yourself, and what you do affects you, and then you create everything you want, and is that the better way of doing it versus you kind of, in my situation, get caught in this conundrum of you've got to scale through it, otherwise why not just, and I'm kind of at that point where I've either got to scale through all this
The
and scale
growing
this
pains.
out, yeah, or do I take a step back and do I build 6 houses a year and make the same amount of money? Why am I doing this? And again, like I said, it's that addiction to affecting so many lives, and that's what's exciting for me, and that's why I got to scale through it.
Yeah.
And then I always question in the back of my head, I'm like, maybe I should just, you know, do it that way, just be myself and have to deal with a few people, and that's it.
That's a very good question, and you know what I'm going to do? We're going to cut it right there, and we're going to get back to this in our next episode. So I think we're on to something here, and I want to get a little bit of feedback from our viewers out there. We're going to pick up on this. All right?
Yeah.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. Monday Night Raw, The Raw Deal with Rich Jekyll, the Millipreneur, and Tom Kurtz, whole 9 yards.